Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to talk about multi-user studies and the key difference between a normal experiment that you build with our platform and a multi-user study is that more than one person participates at the same time in a multi-user study. So this means when your participant clicks on the link to join your study, they're actually placed into a waiting room until there are enough participants to begin that session. So for example, I am going to be showing you a two-player description task. So if I were to join the study right now, I would have to wait until a second person has joined the waiting room, and then we will both be placed in the experiment together as partners. So in this two-player description task, the participants are twofold, I suppose. The first participant is going to see this image over here. They're going to see an image on the right. They're also going to see words that they are not allowed to use to describe this image. So without using these words, they are going to type into this chat box a description of the image, and then the second participant is actually going to see this frame for a while. They're going to wait until the description is complete, and then they're going to choose between four images. So the first participant who's describing the image will then come to the waiting frame. The second participant, seeing the chat box, will then choose between one of the four images which image player one was trying to describe, and then the game will reset. There is a 3-second countdown between each trial, and as you can see in the factor tree over here, what we've done is we've actually varied the position of the correct image. And that is actually referring to the decision frame right here. So sometimes the correct image is in the upper left, sometimes upper right, lower left, lower right, etc. So we actually recommend, this is one of our best examples of a multi-user study, and we would love for you to import this directly into your account because then you will have all of the frames. So you'll have this chat box, you'll have the image, everything will be set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through quickly some of the key aspects of this, and hopefully that will help describe how a similar task can be constructed. So the first thing to note is the chat box. This is actually not a separate object. This is just a display text object that actually has a variable in it. So what's going to happen is the participant is actually going to type into this input object right here. It was a little hidden at first, sorry about that. But they're going to type in the input object, and then whatever they have typed will be stored in a variable, which will then be displayed to the second participant in this display text object. Okay, let me say that again. The first participant's response of, the words used to describe the image will be recorded as a variable and then shown in this text box that we call the chat box, but it's not really a chat box. Okay? Then we have the image that's shown and the not allowed words. Okay? So that's this frame. This first frame is just a countdown. This is going to be the waiting frame where you're either waiting for the person to finish describing or you're waiting for the second participant to pick from one of four images. This is the frame with the four images, and then we have a little spacer frame. Let's go back to this one here and let's go over the events. So the first is the chat event, and let me open this big for you. This is what I was describing earlier. So once the first participant is finished typing out the words that they want to use to describe the image, they are going to press enter, okay? And what that does is it records what they have typed and it sends it to the other user. Again, I highly recommend you import this study to your own account, and then you will have all of these events already programmed because this is a little complicated. But essentially what we're doing is we're recording the username and we are sending the chat that we've created with this chat variable to the other participant, okay? So again, everything is going to just record whatever they have typed into the input box, and it's just going to be sent to the other person. The next thing we need to do is we need to hide the image if you are participant 2. That's the one who has to guess. So on frame start, what we do is we identify something called the role ID. Role ID is extremely important for multi-user studies only. So it doesn't really matter if it's a single user study because everyone's role ID is 1. In a multi-user study, the first person to join is role ID 1 and the second person is 2, and so on and so forth. You can have as many people as you want. So what we've done is we've said, okay, well, if your role ID is 2, you cannot see the image and you cannot see the non-included words. Okay, so the second person is only seeing that chat box that we have created. The next thing we've done is we've created a little time up event. And what this does is at the start of the frame, it counts down for 20 seconds. And then if you are the first person, which means you're the person describing the image, so if role ID is 1, after 20 seconds, you are going to be sent to the waiting frame. If your role ID is 2, after 20 seconds, you are sent to the decision frame, and that's that frame that has the 4 images on it. So again, excellent example of in multi-user studies, you may have to send people to different frames depending on their role ID. So let's say there were 4 participants in this study and everyone saw the chat box, and then the 3 participants who were not describing the image then had to make their own guesses. Then you could send, role ID 1 who was describing the image to the waiting frame, and then 2, 3, and 4 could go to the decision frame, if that makes sense. Okay, so really there's just 3 simple events here. The chat event one is not super simple, but there are 3 events that are really critical to this experiment in particular. Then we've got the waiting frame here. And all this does is it says once the other person is finished making their decision, everyone's going to jump to the feedback frame. And that's what looks like this blank frame over here, but I'll explain that in a minute. This is the decision frame. All it does is it has 4 images. One of them is coded as being correct. And all we're doing is we're saying when the second person clicks on any of the images, we record their reaction time and their decision. And we're also distributing the variable. So let me open this big. So this is what we did with the chat box as well, but it's a little bit easier to explain here. All I'm doing is I am sending the decision that was made by the second participant to all of the participants. And then once they've seen that, we're jumping to the feedback frame. Technically, they don't see this until they get to the feedback frame, but their device has registered that a decision was sent to them. Okay, so the distribute variable event, or rather action, is critical to multi-user studies because we are sending someone's variable to everyone so that they can see. This is also great for examples like public goods games, where you are sending an amount of essentially fake money to a participant in an effort to either collaborate or sabotage. You may be playing a prisoner's dilemma type game, etc. So this is great because whatever variable you have stored, you can send, and it doesn't have to be all participants. You can actually select which participants you're sending this to. All right. So then we have a 3-second timer, which basically says if you don't make a decision within 3 seconds, the variable is going to say you were too slow, and it's going to get sent to everyone. And then we're going to say we're finished, and we're all going to jump to the feedback frame. So now both participants are on this frame. And as you can see, we've coded several text boxes here, and they all say something different. So it's either going to say you were too slow, or the other person was too slow. You, as the guesser, I guess, were correct, or the other person was correct, and then you were wrong, or the other person was wrong. So what we've done is we've just done an if-then event, a very large one, that on frame start, we're going to record what your role ID was and what your decision was, and then that's going to determine which text box is shown to you. So if I was the person guessing, which means if I was role ID 2 and I was correct, I'm going to see the one that says, yeah, you were correct. And then we've got lots of else-if actions here, which essentially are just changing the visibility from 0 to 1. So it's going from invisible to visible. So very large event, but it's actually the least complicated in the experiment. All right, so that's how we've set this up. This is a really great example of just general things that are great for multi-user studies. So chat boxes and sending variables to each other, decisions and feedback frames. Okay, I hope this video was helpful. Definitely go download this from the library, and it is also on the static page. So I will link it in the description of this YouTube video. Thanks for watching.